Hey everyone's Classic DM back with a video for you today. Today we're going to focus on perhaps one of the most historically interesting modules and enemies created in all of the history of Dungeons & Dragons. And it really came from the Vault of the Drow. Of course, a lot of people are going to laugh when I say that because I've always called it the Drow. There's another way to pronounce it as Drow, like row a boat. Think of the word as row with a D in front of it, so Drow. But I'm going to say Drow all day long today, so you can giggle along with me, because that's how we started saying we were 11 years old when the game first came out in 1978, 77. So what's the purpose of the actual video itself? We're not going to do like we've done in other dungeons where we flip the dungeon and walk you through everything and tell you all the details of how to run the dungeon, because the Vault of the Drow in of itself is a very difficult, large-scale campaign that's pretty much the crescendo or the climax of the entire Giant series. So, you know, G1 is studying the Hill Giant Chief, G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. Then you have these two kind of crappy modules in between, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, which is just a bunch of damn caves with thousands of random monsters and little tribal camps like troglodytes. It's not very compelling, okay? Then you have the Shrine of the Kuatoa, which is interesting that there's this underground, you know, amphibian fish-like crazy race with their unpronounceable snibble-de-loop-loop, whatever the hell it is, goddess, which is neat, but then the map is so bad. The map is just this confusing mess of huge rooms and large line of sight, and it's kind of like, whoa, running that's a real pain in the butt. However, if you had a great DM and you ever got a chance to play through all this stuff, you were in heaven. When we played this stuff, we got a chance to go from G1 to G2 to G3, and then we switched to a different DM. One of the players switched to play the DM to D1, which we abandoned in the middle of it because it was so terrible. And then a different kid in the neighborhood bought, who's one of the players, Rusty, he bought the Shrine of the Kuatoa, and he ran that. And then I ran the Vault of the Drow. So I was actually doing all the prep work. So I've run this thing forever. All right, let's get into some more details here. The Drow, whatever, you know, they're first mentioned in the monster manual, like a long time ago on the entry under Elf with these pictures by DCS. The Black Elves or Drow are only legend. They purportedly dwell deep beneath the surface of strange subterranean realm. The Drow are said to be as dark fairies, bright and as evil as the ladder of good. So we can get rid of that right away because it doesn't really give us the information. However, when the first time you get into the Hall of the Fire Giant King, we actually have a combat with, you know, Drow elves, the entry for the first time that's pretty much been reprinted over and over and over is in the back of the Hall of the Fire Giant King, which has all the information. It talks about their black skin, how they're like 5.5 feet tall, how they have Drow cloaks, boots of elven kind type deal. I'm turning the music down just a touch here. How they have their beautiful, exquisite workmanship, adamantite armor made of an alloy of steel. You know, has +1 chainmail, +2, +3, +5 chainmail, use small bucklers, their little hand crossbows, their javelins, and then you talk about the spells. So this is really the beginning of the original, you know, description of these guys, because they are like a Roman patrol. The music in the background is appropriate for that. In the way that they are organized like a military group. And so when you run these enemies in your modules and in your dungeons and your adventures, run them as NPCs using the to hit roll numbers on the combat tables for fighters, paladins, rangers, bards, etc., depending upon what classes you're encountering. I would not use the standard monster, you know, hit dice table, which is attack matrix for monsters, including goblins, blah, blah, blah. I would always use one based on the class because they are in essence like an NPC, okay? They're not really just a monster. Even though the hit dice numbers say 2 or higher in the monster manual, I would always run them as their particular class. The reason I would do that is because the particular classes you're fighting are going to be using spells and abilities that you would use, with the exception of their poison. Their poison's really, really nasty. So G3, the Hall of Fire Giant King, if you've got a copy of it, you pretty much have everything you need to know, how much they appear in groups, etc. Now, in the Fiend Folio, a few years later, which is this great collection of some of the most amazing monsters in all of D&D history. The Githyanki is there, the Githzerai is there, Lolth is in here, everyone's in here, that's great. And all these original ones, monsters that were created by the United Kingdom community of Dungeons & Dragons, which is absolutely brilliant. Way better than the American stuff, in my personal opinion. There's an entry for the Drow. This came out a couple years later, but it's now the same information restated again for you if you don't have the Hall of the Fire Giant King. It talks about their treasure and their cloaks and how they belong to the decay, etc. And it's all that kind of business. So we go into the Vault of the Drow itself. What's the deal with this adventure? Well, it's this massive, huge underground series of caverns. Let's go to the maps in the back. It's designed to be an adventure where the players have a crappy little map. Let's see if we can find that. Like this crappy little hex map, and they're starting at the bottom, and there's all these little markers everywhere. They've stolen this map, and they're going through all these subterranean passages that are miles and miles and miles of hex crawl type stuff, meaning that there's no real predetermined linear path for your players to go through. There is instead this type of area that you're going to be running for your party, hoping that they never go over here. That's why when I made an adventure years later called the Silver Sword of the Githyanki Queen, where the silver sword had been stolen by a Drow high priestess, she had a fortress set up in this island on the Sunless Sea. And there's even a thing at the end of one of the adventures that has a boat, and these are all rivers that can interconnect. So a massive Underdark world to explore in this module. But it's not like your typical, Temple of Elemental Evil and all this kind of business. It's just so freeform. It's so different than anything you've ever seen. So they have little maps that you can work with for, here's a generic subterranean passage that's like 300 feet long, like the size of a football field. Primary, secondary, and tertiary passage. Some of them are worked, some of them are super rough, and they have pools. So in the module, it describes what the primary, secondary, and tertiary passages are like. Therefore, as a dungeon master, you can make up whatever the hell you want. There are 3 primary encounters in the Vault of the Drow that are along the way reaching the actual vault itself. Now, when you talk about a vault, you're really talking about an underground city in a massive cavern, right? So there are great maps been done by John Pintar for these. They're fantastic for these 3 areas and these tertiary passages. And when you actually get into the city itself, let's see if we can, you have this inside flap of the original monochromatic cover for the left side, which is pretty darn vague. Each hex is like 240 yards, like 2.5 football fields. Okay, so imagine yourself going to a football game, a college football game, and this hex is the size of the stadium. Okay, that's pretty big. I mean, across the street there's an office building, and then down a block, and then you're talking about the distance between here and here is like going across town. A lot of people confuse the massive vault map as if it's much smaller. It's actually very, very, very huge, just miles across. Okay, there is 2 pieces to this map, the left side and the right side is always going to be in the inside flap of the cover itself. It's right here. This is a fantastic picture, this David Trampier picture of these Drow patrol. They look like little Roman soldiers with little chainmail kilts and their boots and little scimitars and bucklers, throwing javelins, and the magic user's going, I should be reading the scroll, and a guy's shooting an arrow, but he's got the arrow knocked on the wrong side of the bow. So, this is the classic, type of image that you think of when you think of Drow fighters attacking you, So this is one of the things about the theme of this world that's so interesting, is the whole idea that these guys are working as military groups. So let's go and take a look at what that really, really means. If you're going to run something that has an underground underworld like you see in the Dritz Duerden books, and we're going to talk about that too, so don't worry about that. Drow patrols and these random monster encounters and random patrol things like Drow patrol mixed or Drow patrol only males is really, really good, because it gives you the information for you to figure out what you need, because they're low hit point, like 7 to 10 fighters are only 2nd level, hit points 9 with +1 chainmail, +1 buckler, dexterity, overall armor class of 1. So really low to hard to hit, except the Drow or Drow are always considered to be enemies in an adventure that has like 8, 9, 10 player characters of level 10. And this is something a lot of people don't understand and don't really catch it until they really play it. If you're level 10 fighter and you're trying to attack AC 1 and you have no magic items at all, you only need 11. It's almost right at 50% chance to hit a target. If you've got like a +3 bastard sword and your strength is 17, your bonuses add up, you're going to end up rolling like 5 and higher is going to hit. And when you hit these low level guys, you're going to crush them in one melee round. The thing that's really scary about these guys, despite their innate abilities of dancing light and casting darkness and fairy fire, is the fact that they have this nasty poison. If the poison lands on you, the saving throw is pretty brutal. Let's go to, if you have another description on the second page, when there's 710 fighters, a mixed one will have females. So this part of the module is really, really good for you to figure out, how do I have these, kind of fodder patrols? How are they set up? When there's a female leader, what kind of spells is she going to have? And from there, you can expand and increase their levels, increase their hit points, etc. So patrols are scrubs, right? These are supposed to be people you bump into when you're going through the Underdark or the Underworld or whatever you want to call it, these subterranean passages. Later on, you're going to find, let's actually make this where we can scroll. One moment. Scrolling makes, you don't have to have the pop every time you have the page. Even though the deep gnomes are in here and there's this vampire encounter and all that kind of business along the way, and the succubus, that's not what makes the Vault of the Drow cool. That's just random crap that's in between. They're fun, right? Because as I remember correctly, the vampire guy is like a drow vampire. But when you get to the vault itself, which is the big city, right? This huge, massive cavern. It's okay for the adventurers to be roaming around here because their things are so large. They could probably go undetected because the type of people that are hanging out and doing business in this city are chaotic evil. No one's running around going, let's detect good down by the purple worm shop, right? So it's very easy to be like a Mos Eisley, the spaceport Star Wars kind of a vibe, being in a location where you're kind of keeping a low profile, but you blend in pretty well if you want to, especially if you try to disguise yourself. There's also things in the vault itself dealing with shriekers and yellow mold and harvesters and all that kind of stuff. Give you a sense of what their life is like, how the bugbears are armed, how they use pack lizards and troglodytes, how these weaker type of monster races or humanoids are being used as slaves. Slavery is a big deal in the whole Vault of the Drow thing. I think it's fine. People that get freaked out about slavery and stuff should go back and read freaking world history, because it's been around forever. And we all know that the way that slavery evolved in the United States is absolutely horrific, but we're not here to talk about that kind of stuff. We're talking about a fantasy game, right? That's based on mythology. They have Kuatoa spies, etc. So the vault itself has this tone, right? And it's always anchored around the big idea that there's all these noble houses that have warehouses and buildings. They have a female fighter society. There's merchant villas. There's all this stuff, right? And it's just too big for a party of 10 to go in there and kill everything. You're not going to be able to do this. You're going to get overwhelmed, right? So the player characters are in this kind of like traveler city with no guidance. Like, what are we trying to do? Like, it's one of the few adventures where, like, if you run around, it's like the city-state of the Invincible Overlord from Judges Guild. It's this massive city with this crappy courier font printed document, this beautiful map. Players are going to go in there and just going to get in trouble, right? They're not. I recommend that if you ever run the Vault of the Drow, that you create a plot point that people can understand, such as rescue somebody, right? Steal a major artifact from some merchant that supposedly has it, that took it in a Drow raiding party, that's been handed down and handed down and handed down. That belongs in a museum, right? Something like that. Come up with something where you're going undercover into this Drow city. Maybe you need to kill the leaders of 3 of the noble houses, but you had no idea that you were hired by another noble house to do the job, right? Like, think of something you see like a film plot. The players don't really know what's really happening. Why are they going in here? Do something like that, because without some kind of sense of direction, as a DM, you're going to have trouble with them players just being rambunctious and running around and getting into fights, and you're going to feel frustrated perhaps. And if you're grumpy pants, you start throwing lots of random encounters at them, and then a Drow patrol is going to see them, and the player's just going to causing all this death and destruction, and sooner or later the big boys are going to show up and your party's going to get wiped out or captured. That's where you could use the Drow poison to slow things down and capture the players and put them in prison and have them try to figure out how to get out of it. I love this boat. At the end, it always implies that this boat can be used, as this galley can be used to adventure in other areas, and they never, ever, ever, never expanded upon it. Even though the Queen of the Demon Web Pits is the actual technical follow-up to this adventure, this is such a fantastic missed opportunity. I use these ideas in my the Dark Beneath the Ice module. You should check it out sometime. It's got a lot of dark elves in it, in a underground Arctic location of passages, as opposed to just regular subterranean type of caves you see all over the world. So when you get in here, you're also going to get a little overwhelmed, because every time you have a description of a location, like in the Great Fane of Loath, it's like quarters for 2 female clerics at 4th level, hit points 24 each, AC 0. You're still going to be hitting these things with like a 2, you know? So you're going to go up there and go bam, and you're probably going to kill them in 1 or 2 melee rounds. If a ranger shoots a bow and a monk runs up and punches them in the face, they're going to get stunned and killed. If you have a fighter that's got decent gear on, go up there with a damn longsword and bam, 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 and 2 or 3 hits, these girls are dead. And so it's going to become very easy for a party to start, just face rolling the crap out of everything. You would need, as a DM, to be very good at playing clerics offensively, almost like bots or NPCs in a PvP game. Like with Valandra, the 9th level female cleric with a lurker cloak, lets her polymorph into a 7-foot spread lurker above and spider wand. I mean, things like that are going to make the fights interesting. A rope of entanglement, etc., stuff like that. It's not the default scrubs that can cast command and blindness and prayer and speak with the dead. They're going to make things interesting. It's going to be how you run the more powerful leadership type characters. But even at that, if you have a party of 8 to 10 players and they're level 10 and they know how to play, right? Because you can't teleport out of this thing. That's a big rule with the whole Underdark thing. You can't use a teleportation spell in the World of Greyhawk when you're underground. This deep, it doesn't work. Magnetic fields are messed up. Your party, if you have 3 or 4 fighters and they just run up and start beating the crap out of people, you're gonna have to start using whole person, flame strike from the back, heal, harm. You're gonna have to do things to really keep those unkillable fighters at bay. You may want to start targeting some of the healers. Think of things to make the fights challenging, because to tell you the truth, experienced players, a lot of fighters and a couple of healers are going to come in here and just destroy groups of 10 and 12 of these enemies, unless there's lucky poison shots. You've heard me mention this many times. The saving throw is at, like, I believe a -4 on the Drow poison. Let's see if we got it in here, or do we need to go to the other entry? Bear with me a moment here. I'm going to scroll this down from the side over here. Nah, this is the end of the module. Okay. Nicodemon, Mesodemon, Kuatoa, Deep Gnomes, Mesodemon, Loth, Queen of Spiders. Okay, I've closed down my other PDFs I had open, but when you're reading about Drow and Drow poison, there are high saving throw, fall unconscious type situations. Like, you get hit with a poison, save versus poison at -4, someone could roll a 1, someone could roll a 5, and then boom, 1/10 of the party is now unconscious and they won't be able to fight, and they could get killed or captured. The idea, I think, is more fun, is to have the Drow, who are these people, these surface dwellers with all their stuff? They look really important. If I capture them, I'll get more favor with my leader or with the clerics or with Loth, because I proved that I can overpower and destroy the enemies from the surface. So those are some of the things you might want to think of. Let's now talk very briefly about this shit, okay? Which is good. It's not shit, but something happened. And I think it's cool, but I think people have forgotten. Now, what's cool? When R.A. Salvatore's first novel came out, it was The Crystal Shard, and then, like, what was the second one? Like the Halfling, Streams of Silver, and then the Halfling Gem. These 3 books here followed that up due to the massive popularity of one of the secondary characters, was Dritz Duerden, which is this Drow who's left the evil world of being the Underdark and has decided to be a goody two-shoes, lives in a cave and has a magical panther with him, Guinevere, however you pronounce it, and he's a ranger and believes in Maliki and all this kind of crap, right? And it's interesting Vulcan style, goody two-shoes, logical, fantastic dual wielder fighter. He's such a hero, right? And it's great to have the tormented hero. Now, when these 3 books were written here, there's tremendous value for you as a dungeon master to read the books, because R.A. Salvatore did a great job of integrating hooked horrors and deep gnomes and ropers and all this kind of crap into the adventure of him in Homeland. Talks about how Dritz Duerden lived, how he was raised, how Jarlaxle treated him, how the matron mother Malice treated him, and Breeza and all the other characters. It really gives you a sense of this nasty female-dominated society where males are treated as inferior. That doesn't really come across very clear in the Vault of the Drow. They always mention that there's female clerics and there's fighters. They don't really talk about it too much. So this book is a really good book to read even though it's based on Menzoberranzan, because this is all Forgotten Realms. So for whatever fucking reason, when Wizards of the Coast and TSR was still making this stuff, they like dumped Greyhawk for some dumb reason, and they created the Forgotten Realms. That's great. Greenwood's super creative, crazy wizard guy, man, one of the biggest contributors to the whole D&D universe. Hats off to him. But I don't know why they decided to create yet another world that pretty much looks like Middle Earth with a lot of detail in it and tons of adventures. For whatever reason, when they broke away, they did a great job, though, however, of giving you novels, fiction, adventures. So the Forgotten Realms is probably like the most well fleshed out world of all the D&D universes. It's so well done and so popularized that every single subsequent edition of D&D, with the exception of like, what was it, Eberron in 4th edition, which is junk, completely stupid. But besides that, has always been used because it's great and it sells. So the generation that got into the Forgotten Realms novels, if you were an old school guy like me, like 60 years old or whatever, and you played D&D when you were a kid in middle school, and you wanted to go back and see what it feels like to play the Vault of the Drow again, go spend, get a copy of the book, get it secondhand from a used bookstore or something like that, get it on Kindle, and read Homeland. Homeland is good for that element. It gets you in the mood for thinking about what kind of drama and stories you could tell if your players enter the Vault of the Drow. Of course, you're a creative person and Dungeon Master too, right? So you could have created your own little Drow outpost looking at that big hex map, right? And I'm going to take this little hex here and make my own little Drow outpost. It's just going to have one noble house and a bunch of slaves and trade in it. That's where they cut gems. Now, you give them your design ideas. They make artifacts that require gems. They cut the magical gems that are shipped off to another location where magical wands and staves and staves or whatever are made, etc. Come up with an idea like that, right? Exile and Sojourn is where, Exile is like Drizzt Do'Urden in the Underdark finally reaching the surface type of an idea. So if you want to get a sense of like some of the random encounters and the people he encounters, some of the things that happen along the way and the monsters and shit, that's cool. It's neat. It's fun. But Homeland's a good one. Homeland's really, really good one. So unfortunately, though, over the years, I bought these books the day they came out. I remember sitting by the pool after working all day long in the afternoon and reading Homeland I picked up from a bookstore the moment it had come out because I had heard about it. And I was like, wow. And I got Exile and Sojourn the moment they came out. I love these books. They're fun to read, right? They are great at setting the tone. And of course, they became so popular that R.A. Salvatore, who's super prolific writer, has written 70 of these things. There's like all this Drizzt Do'Urden, Caddy Bree storyline stuff all over the place. It's crazy. So if you love all that business, knock yourself out. But the whole idea that Drow are happy-go-lucky and now are a playable class in the game and all that kind of crap is just really misguided. I really, really don't like that. Romulans are Romulans, dude. Klingons are Klingons. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it isn't the happy Romulan player character class now. These are vicious, evil, backstabbing Romans, if you think about it. Going back to the Vault of Drow, and we'll sum things up here in just a moment. So if you decide that you want to recapture the fun and the thrill of running the Vault of the Drow, yes, you can try running this original adventure. You're going to need to do some homework on figuring out why. I strongly recommend you skip the 3 interstitial encounters that are considered to be along the way, because thematically, except for the little Drow outpost here, number 7, they're weird. Like they're too D&D. They're not thematically tied to the overall reason why you're down here and what's happening, right? It's just another quirky area. And you've seen this. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, you know what it's like to play White Plume Mountain. Every area is quirky. So if you're going to do this, caves, passageways, random encounters, come up with a plot device, the reason why you want to go to the vault. Make a smaller version of the vault. Make it a secondary location that only has 4 noble houses. Just use this corner of the map here. Those are the types of things you can make an incredibly fun adventure for your friends, your family, your kids, whatever. If you keep the scope kind of under control, where you can go in there and over the course of 4 weekends, y'all did this really cool big adventure and it had this really neat theme behind it, and your kids were sneaking down the streets trying to find someone to assassinate or free their friend that gets captured. So you could go off in La La Land here pretty quickly. So that's the strength of this body of work. I don't think that running the Vault of the Drow as written is a great idea. I think it's too many player characters, there's too much stuff going on, there's too much wide open lack of direction, and parties are going to just, like I said before, they're going to city state the overlord. They're going to go in there and just cause a ruckus, start killing everything all the time. You're going to lose sight of why you're playing the game after they've destroyed 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 patrols, and they've broken into a building and got a bunch of magic items. They're going to have like bags full of magic items, and you're going to have to ramp up the difficulty level. And unfortunately, the difficulty level in the Vault of Drow is mostly the proximity to so many other patrols and enemies, being overwhelmed. You're in a city. You really are in a city the size of Atlanta almost. It's really crazy. Maybe not that big. Maybe San Antonio. So yeah, but that's what the quick video is about today. Hope you enjoyed it. It's a classic. Everything in Dungeons & Dragons that's recognizable today. If someone were to say, even though they use the beholder picture all the time in their marketing material, right? You would definitely have to say that in Dungeons & Dragons, the signature thing that just keeps coming back over and over and over is Drow, and Lolth. Like, it's just the enemy, the most evil epitome of the enemy world possible in the whole game world, but it's been watered down. Don't let yours be watered down. Don't let player characters say, I want to play a Drow character and return to my homeland. Just put some surface people in there, give them a reason for going in there, and you'll have a great time. All right, we're gonna leave it at that today. I know we've been doing lots of Path of Exile stuff lately because my wife and I have been having a lot of fun playing that again together. Don't forget to check out on the YouTube channel the community tab, where there is all kinds of postings. I'll start posting things there about information about what's going on. If you go to the main channel in of itself, which looks like this, be sure and check out this post tab, which is something they've added, where I will start updating and communicating about what's going on, what's coming up, and I'm going to try to make more content as best I can. And yeah, have fun, leave comments, and we'll talk to you again really soon. I really appreciate you guys checking up and keeping the channel live. If there's something more you want to see, I know I still owe you the rest of the Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan. I promise that we'll get to it. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.